Welcome to POSTCAST. A game of runs is an understatement tonight. David Locke along with Ron Boone. The Jazz open the night on a 16-3 run. It almost reminds me a little bit of my dad, who's a nervous Nelly sports fan whenever his favorite college football team, who hopefully wins tomorrow, scores too early in a game. He says, oh no, it's too easy. They're going to let up. I don't know if that's what happened, but the Jazz got a 16-3 lead early. By the end of the quarter, they were still up 3, and then the world fell apart in the second quarter. The Jazz score I think it was 8 points in that second quarter. They shoot 4 of 17. They did not hit a 3 or a field goal. It's one of the least efficient offensive quarters the NBA has seen in a while. And then they went through what Tyrone Corbin, I think, would be the feel sorry for themselves stage in the early part of the third quarter. And then they decided that it kind of sucks, as Ty likes to say, and they fought really hard and got back in this game. And we had some tense moments late. So there's a lot of different stories to tell inside this one.
That surge started in the third quarter, as you just mentioned, carried over into the fourth quarter. Actually, the third quarter with 28 points was as far as points are concerned, was more than the fourth quarter at 25. But that start the Jazz got off to very early, and I thought that the matchups were in the favor of the Jazz, and they really took advantage of it as Cantor got off to a good start with 8 points, 9 points there for Gordon in that first quarter. The substitutions came for the Boston Celtics in that second quarter, and that's when the Celtics started to catch fire, started to make some shots. And the Jazz just, as you just mentioned, start to lose it. I mean, just started the body language, especially of Derek Favors. You could just tell that, he started to pout. Things were not going his way, and he kept charging, traveling calls, those type of things that just could not or did not let him get going out there. And finally, Coach Corbin had to relieve him from the game.
Positive part of the story tonight, probably twofold, is the overall fact that these guys, they got back in the game. And there was a period of time where it didn't feel like they would. Every NBA game has runs. There's 100 possessions. It always happens. But it is nice to at least see. And, maybe, we didn't get out of what we wanted out of Derek Favors, but Gordon Hayward stayed in this game and ended up having a pretty fabulous evening and was probably the best player on the floor for most of the night.
Ended up 12 for 20 from the field. And most of his points coming in the second half. He had 11 points at the half, but then he catches fire. But what he did, Dave, was start going to the basket. He started driving hard, and taking hits. He started to get physical. The jump shots started to fall for him, and Cantor started to get some easy buckets again because of the dribble penetration, and the Jazz started to get on a little roll. Now, did the Boston Celtics end up letting up? I thought they took some early shots, and I thought they started to lose it as well because they didn't have that leadership out there on the floor. Obviously Rondo sitting over there on the bench.
Boston had lost a 22-point lead earlier this year, so this place got a little nervous. But let's zero in on Gordon for a second. He was after the first 3 games, he's shooting 40% from the floor. Last night he goes 8 of 16, and talking to some of the coaches, they thought that was as good a game as he's played all year long, just his understanding. And tonight seemed like he may have taken another step. We've now seen him in the last 2 games go 20 of 36 from the field and maybe begin to understand, all right, this is how I'm getting my shots, where I'm getting my shots. I'll get enough shots and understand what this team needs out of it.
I think more so than where my shots are going to come from is more like how can I help this team? What do I have to do to help this team? Because when he gets going, you saw what happened. Now Cantor starts to get some easy buckets, and the Jazz you put the defense in a scramble, and you start worrying about your rotations and things like that. That's when you get good shots, and obviously that second and third quarter the Jazz were not doing that, and boy, hopefully they have found a way to play this game, and that will translate or transfer into some wins.
As bad as that second quarter was tonight, there's some growth out of that. I think they saw how poor they could be. And then I think they saw fighting back. I think they, in one night, got a little bit of the contrast of what we're talking about here, and hopefully that propels them forward to better nights ahead.
A young team should learn something every game. They should learn something every quarter. I mean, and the coaches are always talking to them. We saw that this morning at the breakfast meeting. Individual coaches watching film with individual players. this is a team that the coaches are not only coaching and trying to win basketball game, but they're trying to teach there as well.
I'll tell you, there's one moment in this game that kind of sums up. I don't mean, I hope this doesn't sound too critical, but I just think it's just a little bit of a perfect summation of kind of what Tyrone Corbin is dealing with. Alec Burks' first 6 minutes tonight were not good. He got benched.
Yes.
Okay. He was not very good last night either. So suddenly Tyrone's sitting there and he's got a guy on the bench who's linked about 30 minutes of pretty poor basketball for him. I mean, and on a high level, like not just sort of poor, like really off his game. And yet he's still the correct answer on how to try to solve the problem in the second half. I mean, that just kind of, to me, sums up what Tyrone is dealing with. But John Lucas and Jamal Tinsley are just struggling at the point guard, and, Alec, he's got to go to Alec, and then Alec commits 2 turnovers late in the game. It's really not what he does. But that is probably the best answer for that circumstance right now, and it was on a guy that, banished is too big a word, benched, gets really highlighted, but frankly was taken out of the game because of ineffective play, and Ian Clark came in for him in the second quarter in an unnatural substitution, and yet it was still Burks who Tyrone has to call on late in the game.
And Burks tried, but those turnovers he had there down the stretch was crucial. They had some momentum, and that stopped it. And then when Bass gets a couple of buckets on the other end of the floor, now that the hard work that you put in there, it just seemed like it wasn't going to happen.
I gave out a Jazz note tonight for Richard Jefferson. I thought his play to open up the third quarter kind of reignited the Jazz veteran leadership as you'd want to see it. He started driving the basket. He fought through it. I think he set the tone for everyone. Anyone you give a Jazz note to tonight?
I gave mine to Gordon, especially in that fourth quarter. He had 8 points in that fourth quarter, but the points is not what I was giving to the Jazz note for. It was the way he was driving to the basket and making things happen for his teammates.
Jazz fall to Boston. They go to 0-5 for the first time in Utah history. On behalf of Ron, I'm David. Have a good night and be safe.